Tracy Lawrence, sir, it's so good to meet you. How are you doing this morning?
Man, I'm absolutely wonderful. How about
Us here,
yourself?
we're doing good, and we're excited about Thursday here in Houston at the House of Blues. We're really excited to see you. What can fans expect for you being now that you're back on the road? 2020 and all that's over. What can fans
You
expect
know,
at your show at House of Blues?
last year I celebrated my 30th anniversary, and since I recorded my first album all the way back in '91, and we dropped 3 albums last year with 30 songs to commemorate that. So I'm trying to weave as many in as I can, and still keep the integrity of a lot of those big hits that I've had in the past alive. So we're doing, I mean, Sticks and Stones through Birmingham and doing a lot of that stuff. But we've worked a real cool tribute up to the our heroes that have passed away in the last couple of years. A couple of guys from COVID, a couple of guys from natural causes, and that's really been bringing the house down. So it's pretty much a straight ahead country show with a little edge to it, man. I won't say we'll go as far as some of the new acts that are out there, but I do what I do. It's my thing.
Man, I love your music. I mean, I've been listening to it since Sticks and Stones came out. I mean, really, I mean, that's where it all started
Oh
for me,
yeah,
was sitting with my uncles around the barbecue pit at the farm and listening to your music. I mean, so it's played a huge role in my life. Some of my best memories as a child are listening to your music. Let's talk about hindsight 2020 real quick. What was it like to go back and
okay.
what was it like to go back and re-record those songs, re-record some of those hits? Because I mean, technology's completely changed. What was that like?
There were parts of it that were real fun. Parts of it were a little frustrating. Because obviously, as a fan, I remember listening to remakes, and I don't know if people retain things as much as I do, but I remember little nuances of in the track about the guitar player played, and if there was a drum lick that's a little bit different or anything that's off. So you know, trying to recreate that thing exactly the way it was is absolutely impossible to do. No matter how hard you try, the guitar players are never going to play the same things. You hope that you can it'll elevate it a little bit and take it to another place, but still keep the integrity of it. But it's always a lot of fun to do those recreations, but they're never the same as the originals, are they?
No, they get pretty close though. Would you say it's easier now with the technology, now that it's digital? Because I mean, I love the sound of it going direct to tape, just the warmth
Yeah.
that you get out of that, but how would you compare the process today?
Sonically, I know it's a lot different. I miss the warmth too because several of those early albums were cut on tape. The first album was actually analog, Sticks and Stones was, and then as we moved into Alibis, that was when we went to 48 digital, but it was still tape, and we stayed on digital there, and the 48 track machines for several years. Until we got into the Pro Tools, in the next decade. I mean, so and it does lose a little bit of warmth. The full spectrum of the sound is a little bit different, and there seems to be a little bit more air in it. Obviously now with the technology, you can isolate things, you can shove the vocal up in there real hot, but to me that changes a little bit of the character of the record. It's you're and but you can say the same thing about some of the originals. I go back and listen to some of those old records that I did, and there's flaws on it. There's things about it that I wish I could go back and fix on the originals too. So I think as a creative person, that never goes away.
But sometimes it's those mistakes, that like stick out, like you said earlier, that kind of like help you fall in love, even more with the record. I,
Absolutely.
I want to go back to the beginning. How did your love of music begin? I mean, like I told you, it was for me, sitting on the farm listening to your music as a kid growing up. But for you, how did it all start?
I did have some experiences in church where I sang religious music at a young age, but I never really had a passion for it like I did country. I remember, 3 and 4 years old. I remember singing Glenn Campbell songs and Charlie Pride songs way back in the day, and then Kenny Rogers had Lucille and the Gambler and Coward of the County. All that came out, and I was probably 7 or 8 years old when all that stuff came out. So my love for traditional country music goes way, way back. I mean, it's kind of like I was born with a passion for it. But my mom listened to so much Loretta Lynn when she was carrying me. She told me that if I'd been born a girl, she was going to name me Loretta Lynn. So
Man, that's good. Uh, I saw a quote that you said in the past, and I found this interesting that you had some people around you that saying that, you're just chasing a crazy dream, Um, that must have been tough, like before you ended up having, I mean, Six and Stones, going number one. But how'd you persevere and keep going and pushing yourself through those tougher times before it eventually took off?
I think for me, I was pretty much just oblivious to it. There's a lot of doubts, even within my own family, especially my dad. My dad didn't think too much of the whole thing, but I had this desire inside that I wanted it so bad, and I was very knowledgeable of country music. I mean, years and years. I mean, I was up to speed on songwriters and not only the artists but the producers and a lot of musicians in town. I was pretty educated when I came to town. I just really believed that I had a natural grasp of it, and I believed that I had a unique voice. I really believed that at some point that I would get a shot. Now, I didn't know for sure if my luck at being an artist would be where I went with it, or if I'd wind up working at a record label or going into radio. I knew I was going to be in the business, but I knew I was passionate about being on stage. So you just have to block all that stuff out. And I don't, I would imagine I'm not the first artist to come to town that really, really felt like, you're kind of beating your head against the wall with a lot of people that love you. My dad's words to me when I left, I remember him saying, "Boy, I'm glad you're going to do this. Hurry up and go up there so you can come on back and get on with your life." That's pretty much the way everybody felt. Go
Yeah,
up
I
there
mean,
and fail and then come on back.
yeah, it's usually a lot of times the family, the people that are closest to you. I mean, even with the company that we started, it was the first couple of years, my parents like, when are you gonna get a real job? You got a degree, and then eventually it took off. So I can relate to it in a way. So when you're in your truck and you're just driving around, do you listen to country? Do you listen to rock? Like, what do you listen to on your off time?
It varies. I've gone through periods where, sorry, I was moving away from the alarm system. It goes through periods where I'll get back into old AC/DC all the way through Van Halen. And I go through real traditional periods where I'm actually going back and living with Glenn Campbell and experiencing all that old stuff. And I like some modern pop music and stuff. I really dig Lady Gaga. There's a lot of really great acts out there that are very talented. Digging a lot of what Morgan Wallen's doing. I just had a chance to sit down with Hardy over the weekend on my podcast and visit with him, and he's definitely taken the edge to another level. But I appreciate all forms of music, and I really, I always wanted to have a high, screaming, rangy voice like they did in the hair bands back in the '80s. That's just not what I got. I got a traditional baritone voice, so this was the path I went down.
Did you talk to Morgan Wallen for TL's Roadhouse? Was it for that
Did not.
or Honky Tonk?
I had Hardy on the bus with me. I had Hardy on TL's Roadhouse. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been out there. I've done several shows with Morgan, but I actually haven't had a chance to meet him yet. Man, he's really hard to get close to since the whole TMZ thing.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
was wondering if you're gonna have him. I know you're gonna be doing some shows with Clay Walker coming up. I would love to see that
Yeah.
episode if that ends up happening.
Yeah, I know we've got 6 shows the rest of this year, the first 2 weeks in November. I don't think we have anything down in Texas, but we're already putting plans together to go out next year and do quite a bit of different shows.
Do you have any advice for the next generation of country artists that are coming out?
You know, uh, the biggest thing for me was just to believe in yourself and block out all the noise. I think you just kind of have to put all that stuff aside and put your 10,000 hours in and get as prepared as you can and be good at your craft and be level headed and try to make good decisions. And it's a very competitive business that's never changed, and I think it's more competitive now than it's ever been. If you really look at the handful of people that are at the top of the chart game and that are having a lot of success, there's not very many. I mean, it's a very small format these days. But you know, I think if you're talented and you dedicate yourself and you put a lot of hard work in, I think anybody can have success if they try hard.
Absolutely. Um, I want to talk a little bit about your charity work. You just did a golf tournament, I know, recently for Mission Possible.
Mhm.
Why is it important for you to give back? How did all that begin?
You know, I felt like it's been a part of my career from the very beginning. I grew up doing that. You know, my family was always very involved in church, and we did a lot of stuff around the holidays for less fortunate people, and it's just always something that I felt was important. You know, and you know, this might be hard for a lot of people to believe, but you know, when you come from very little and all of a sudden you have all this success and people are giving you trucks and you making a lot of money and all your friends back home are still struggling, a lot of this comes with guilt. There's a lot of guilt with it, and I think to balance that out you really have to try to find a way to give back to people that and sustain that for your entire life. I think it's just very important that you continue to do that because I feel very blessed, you know, in the big scheme of things, I'm one of a handful of people that has ever really been able to make a living at this level and to thrive and do it for over 30 years. And I don't want to take it for granted. I think I appreciate it even more now than I did when I was younger. I always felt like it was important to give back, but I think now I really understand the true value of it and how special it is to have the opportunity to do this for a living. I could be roofing houses somewhere, believe me.
Man, Tracy, it's so good to hear that. I mean, I've been a huge fan of yours, obviously, for since the '90s, you know, and since your music first came out. But now getting to talk to you, I mean, it's just gone to a whole nother level, hearing how down to earth you are. And I know you got a bunch of tour dates coming up. You're gonna be hitting the road with Jason Aldean and Brad Paisley. So I'm assuming you're gonna be touring all the way through 2023. Is that correct?
I finish up my last shows. I finish up the second week of December. Then I'm going to take about 6 to 8 weeks off, a little downtime, and we'll get fired back up in the early spring. So I think we've got some national finals stuff out there in Vegas the first part of December, and then we'll work our way back through New Mexico and Arizona. And I think we may even finish up around San Antonio. I think they're working on a couple things right now, but we're on the downhill side of it, man. And it's been this by far has been the busiest year that I've had in a long time. The crowds have been tremendous, but we have put a lot of miles on the buses this year. There's been a lot of East Coast to West Coast stuff, you know, all the way up into the Dakotas, and it's been pretty wide open. I usually run about 75 to 80 shows, and I think we're going to finish up with about 95 this year, which is a lot more than I've said after COVID I wasn't going to work that much again. And I did exactly what I said I wasn't going to do.
Well, here you are. I am really looking forward to seeing the show Thursday at House of Blues in Houston. Tracy Lawrence, thanks again for sitting down and joining me. And it's a privilege to get to meet you, man. So I
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
very much. Appreciate it. Look forward to meeting you Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely.